you want to give basically an overview of how they evaluate applicants using all the objective type stuff, like the numbers and that, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, sure. So talking about the application, and I mentioned this in the first webinar that we did, but unfortunately, there's not really this one specific way that you can get into SSM, right? Because there's people from all over the state with different backgrounds and different opportunities to them. So you can't necessarily say that one thing that gets one person in one year will get another person in the next year. It's really not going to work like that. But the generic way that we feel like SSM evaluates people, your first, let's go over the numbers, right? So your GPA and your test scores. And this year, test scores, you guys don't have to worry about them if you're a sophomore because they're waiving them. We don't know how, if there's any freshmen or eighth graders here, we don't know how that's going to be in future years. But GPA and test scores are not going to make or break you. They have to be at a certain standard, especially with GPA, I would say they would have to be at a, roughly higher standard compared to the average of your home-based school if you want to be competitive. But regardless, getting a really high GPA or a really high test score is not going to automatically get you into the school, and vice versa if it's low. The majority of the emphasis on the application would really go into your essays and how well you write them, how best you sell yourself to the school, because they want to see what's special about you, why do they want to admit you to the program. But yeah, like the numbers part of it, of the pure statistics of who you are and stuff like that, doesn't have too big of an impact in the long run.
Yeah, so I just wanted to stress that if you're worried about your GPA or test scores being too low, just remember that your extracurriculars and your essays, if you can really show yourself, put your passion into it to the admissions committee, then they may just overlook your lower scores and lower GPA. So just remember, put the effort into the extracurricular and especially the essay sections, and there's always a chance that you might get in.
One more thing that I'd like to mention about this as well is the difference in how they evaluate people based off the region that you're applying from, because the school accepts more people from the counties that have a higher population. So I know me, Region, and Noel are from Wake County. Wake County has a bunch of schools here that are extra competitive, which is why the school takes in more people from our district, from our congressional district. But in other areas of North Carolina, depending on where you are, they may or may not take as many people. So there's not really one metric that they compare you across the board for all across the state. It's region from where they compare your data with other people.
Yeah, they also try to space it out across the state too, though. So they will, for regular admission, they only try to pull a certain number of people from each county, but then from the wait list, people from the larger counties tend to get pulled more for the wait list. So also, if you get on the wait list, don't be scared to sit on the wait list because you can get in from the wait list. I got in from the wait list. So don't just say, oh my gosh, I didn't get in, if they let you on the wait list.
All right, thank you. I got a question about the essays. I'm going to get back to that because we have a lot of other questions planned out the essays, but don't worry, I'll make sure to get to that. But right now, I want to talk about how GPA and grades are evaluated. So talk about how, if it's evaluated just on the unweighted or rated GPA, talk about how the course rigor will affect your grades and just how the admissions look into all that.
Yes, they definitely pay attention to what your homeschool is like when they think about your GPA. So they really more want to see that you're taking challenging courses that your school offers. So if your school doesn't offer a bunch of APs, don't get worried that your GPA is going to look lower than other people and it's going to put you at a disadvantage, because they do look at what your homeschool looks like.
I think they want to see you classes wise is that you just challenge yourself and you're up for the quote unquote greater challenge.
All right, the next question is about the letters of recommendations from the teachers and counselors. If you guys could just give an overview of like the whole process of getting them, and also give your opinion on how much they matter and how required they are, because I know sometimes students just aren't able to get a letter from their teacher. They might ask them and then the teacher just doesn't send them in.
So the process for getting a letter of recommendation, obviously you ask your teacher, and then on is it Blackbot that they use now, or is it, I forgot what we used. There's like a little thing, and you put your teacher's email inside of there, and they'll get an email to fill out the recommendation, and yeah, that's all you got to do. But other than that, like the weight of the recommendations, I personally do not know, but I feel like you should always ask teachers that you have some sort of personal connection with, or some sort of like that they see something in you and they see like, oh, you really want to go here, you're really passionate about it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. In general, when you're asking for teacher recs, I would definitely try to, like, don't ask your teacher on the last day or like anywhere close to the deadline. Make sure that you're on top of it and you're asking your teachers for these recommendations a good maybe 2-3 weeks in advance, because you don't want to stress them out and you don't want to stress yourself out of them possibly forgetting to write your recommendation. So if you give yourself ample time to remind them if they haven't filled it out, and also give them time to fill it out, that'll be good. And yeah, like Priya said, we as students don't exactly know how much the teacher recs are really weighted in acceptance, but better safe than sorry. So ask the teachers that you really think are going to give you a good recommendation. And yeah.
And so about the recommendations, I feel like since recommendations are similar to your essays, and that you, the admissions committee will be able to see a personal aspect of you, they're definitely going to be pretty important. But of course, as Shashank said and Priya said, we don't know exactly how important. But of course, you should still look for teachers who you've developed a personal rapport for, who can sort of vouch for you and say, oh, he has this, he has that, and that's why this person should go to SSM and stuff like that. So it's definitely pretty important part of the application. You can't say how much though.
I just want to bring this up. This was brought up in the last webinar. Don't worry too much about whether your teachers send them in or not. NCSSM, like as long as you message the teachers and then maybe one of them just doesn't get one in, that's on the teacher, that's the teacher's fault. And as long as you have not all three of them just not sending them in, they'll realize that the teacher might have just not gotten to it in time, and I don't think they'll hold it against you. And then our next question is, what is the best way to present your activities, leadership positions, extracurriculars, and achievements on the application?
So what I did for these categories is that I would basically list from increasing importance to decreasing importance from what I saw in my extracurricular. So whatever extracurricular was most important to me, I would put at the top and then provide a quick synopsis of what I did in the extracurricular, and then I would go down the list. And about how to describe each of your extracurriculars, I guess I would say sort of provide what position you were, and then make sure you kind of explain what you did in the extracurricular and why the extracurricular is special. And that'll kind of explain, oh, that's why he or she values this extracurricular, and the application committee can move down the list and kind of see what you did in each of these extracurriculars.
Yeah, when you guys are describing your extracurriculars and other activities in your essays, make sure you guys don't undersell yourselves, because what seems maybe something that you've been doing for a really long time, or something that kind of feels like natural to you, may or may not be that standard for the admissions officer. So whatever you guys are doing, whatever you're putting into your essay, make sure that you're describing it in great detail and why it is so important to you. Because personally, I think that helped me get into the school, and help the admissions officers understand why I like doing what I do.
All right, now we're gonna move on to the essay part of the application. So could you guys just give some general tips about the essays, such as how they should approach the word count, and is it okay to have overlapping material across multiple essays?
So word count, I mean, if you can like say what you want to say in less than the word count, I mean, that's fine. But I wrote about till the word count. I wasn't exactly 1,500 characters, I believe. But also, oh shoot, I forgot the second part of the question.
The second part was just about, is it okay to kind of make the multiple essays relate with each other, to have material that overlaps across multiple essays?
Yeah, so a lot of my essays were also overlapping. I wrote about one club that I was very passionate about in two of my essays. And I showed like how I grew from the club too. So yeah, showing how you can improve yourself is also very important.
Yeah, for overlapping on essays, and it's not a bad thing if you do, especially if it's something that you're very passionate about, and that you want the admissions officers to take note of. But also, I would also try to not state the exact same thing, or give off the same impression on each and every one of your essays, because the essays are asking different questions. So you want to be able to address different parts of your life. But it's not like if you mention the same thing maybe once or twice in multiple essays, it's not going to kill you.
Yeah, just make sure you don't repeat yourself, because they emphasize that when we were applying again and again. And also for the essays, you want to think about them as the essays are the part of the application where they're trying to figure out what qualities that you have that make you fit for the school. So like, I know one of the questions on there last year was about, why do you need to be at the school? Like, what can you not get at your home high school that you can get here? And that's really important for you to also say what type of person you are in your essays, and why the type of person you are, you need to be at NCSSM versus where you are right now.
And yeah, so about the word count, like Priya said, it shouldn't be your primary goal to reach this 1,500 character limit. Whatever you need to say, however long you need to say it, in the most concise way possible, as long as you're getting your point across, is how long you should take. You shouldn't be adding fluff or extra words to get to that limit. And then the second question was about overlapping. So of course, like everyone else said, if you can highlight different facets of a particular activity in different essays, then do so, but don't repeat the same thing over and over and over.
All right, and this next question comes from the audience. Should they mention like some of their accomplishments and extracurriculars in the essays, even though there's already a dedicated section on the application to mention those?
So yeah, I would definitely mention like a bunch of the essays are oriented towards, I mean, they're trying to get you to answer the question with some, some evidence, I guess I can say, of your extracurriculars and your other activities. I can't remember all the prompts exactly, but I do know for a fact that on a bunch of my essays, I did talk about my extracurriculars and how that shaped who I was as a person. I would not go in the essays and list out your extracurriculars just for the sake of listing it out because they already do like ask that separately. So like mention them if you have a reason for having them in the essay itself and if it helps you answer the essay question.
All right. Our next question is, could you give an example of something you had on your application, either in the essays or some achievement you had that you think made you stand out against all the other students applying?
So in my essays, I talked a lot about the leadership positions that I had in sophomore year, even though they were minor. When I still talked about them and how they like helped me become who I am now, or like helped me become more curious about STEM and stuff like that. So one of them was like being a mentor for FLL, and I talked about how that really pushed me to see like, oh, I actually like working with kids, and I like this. This is my passion. Yeah.
I know for me, I push a lot of, I am quite the nerd. So I didn't just talk about the hard extracurriculars that I've done that are on paper, but I also talked about hobbies that I've done throughout my life. Like I love going outside in nature. And I emphasized that a lot as I'm not just a student on paper, like I intrinsically love learning. And emphasizing that like that's the kind of person that you are instead of just on paper, I think that helped.
Yeah, similar to that, just emphasize whatever activities that you feel like show your passion. So for me, that was a couple of organizations and competitions that I participated in. And in these competitions is where I spent the majority of my time, and it's also where my passion lied. So I basically just emphasize that that's where I spent the most time in, and it kind of tied into my entire application overall, right? So you just want to build a picture of yourself in the essays. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I feel like personally what made me stand out was also my competitions. I actually competed in many of them with regions, so that's something that we have in common. But yeah, the competitions, leadership in competitions and other clubs, and also highlighting some community service or volunteering that you guys do, either in like club, other honor societies, things like that, where you do volunteering and other types of community service. So when I highlighted those type of things, I think that helped me stand out. And I just got a question asking for competitions. Should we have state awards? Um, I'm assuming that mean like that's asking like, is it expected that you're going to have state awards? And I would say no. Just because, let's say you competed in a competition and you didn't win a state award doesn't mean that you shouldn't mention it in your application. If it's because if it's something that you really spent a lot of time on and something that you're really passionate about, that's something that or something that you're like, yeah, something that you're passionate about and you want to let people know that you did, then that's something that you should let the university know. In the end, I wouldn't necessarily say that your placement in any specific competition is gonna make or break you for getting in. So it's about the effort that you put in to study for it or compete in it or whatever type of competition it is. Describing that process of how you prepared for that competition and talking about that type of stuff, I feel like is more valuable than the actual award itself.
All right, and the last question, talking about the application, is actually something that happens once you are done with the application and you submitted it. I think it's in February, it might be in March. There's a day where all the applicants go into NCSM and then they learn about NCSM, and there's a math exam you take, and they use that exam to help decide who gets in. Could the panelists just talk about how difficult they thought it was and what level of math was probably necessary for that exam?
Don't worry about the math exam. If you've not taken the math in a while, I would probably look back at it briefly, but don't worry about it. I was probably in the middle of math 3 at the time, had not even finished math 3, and it was not difficult. So don't stress about it.
I think from what I can remember, it was like math 1, math 2, math. So I wouldn't really worry about it at all.
Yeah,
I also okay, I was just gonna say I don't think it plays that much of a role in the application, but like Noah and Priya said, don't worry about it, it's not bad.
Yeah, and I'm also fairly certain that's only for residential students. So if you're planning on applying for online, you don't have to worry about any math exam.
Yeah, the point of that question was just to emphasize, do not worry about that exam. I actually know someone who attended NCSM who did very bad on the exam, still got in, and basically because he did bad on the exam, he had to take some course, but it didn't stop him from getting into the school. So as we're wrapping up the admissions part of this Q&A, I want to talk about my own application. I applied the same year as them. I didn't get in, and I will never know exactly why, but my speculation is that my application was very centered around my achievements, my accomplishments, and I didn't really talk much about my own quality of character, my own being as a student. I mostly just talked about the things I did. And from what I know now, that's not really what NCSM wants. They want to get to know you. They don't just want to learn about all the competitions you competed in and all the achievements you won. So that would be my advice to everyone applying. Make sure you actually have some substantial stuff about you as a person instead of just a list of things that you've done which you think are impressive. You guys, I don't know if you know any, but if you do, what resources, or like resources, I mean any books, camps, websites did you guys use and you think would be helpful for other students to use to build their application or to expose themselves to more STEM opportunities?
I can address the, I guess the more scientific part of that question of resources to, I guess, boost your application in the sense of, I guess, gain more knowledge in order to perform better in science and math. Like before, Khan Academy, Godsend, right? And like other textbooks of just anything in your field. If you're like the person like me that is really going on this scientific competition route, picking up any textbook that focuses on a specific topic like biology or earth science and things like that, those really help in helping you gain your knowledge that you're going to need in order to perform well in certain competitions or tests and things like that.
And just because we haven't mentioned this yet, as far as like improving your application, it is a great idea to have someone else look over it, especially your essays. I know I had my parents read it. I had friends who had teachers read it or counselors they trusted. It doesn't hurt to have somebody else look at it for you.
And about that, I actually I got this question during the registration process. Someone asked if they should buy a tutor to look over their applications. It's completely up to you. I don't think it's required though, because I'm guessing most students who got in probably wrote the essays themselves. They might have had their parents or friends look over it, but I doubt they had someone certified look over it to make them expects that. I'm guessing they assume the essays to be at a student every year. I remember that on my application. One of them wants to know whether you should talk about why you need the school or why the school needs you. And then the other one wants to know what should you focus on one main reason or use multiple reasons. If you guys would like to answer that based on your own, if you remember how you wrote your own essays, that'd be good.
So for the I can answer the second part, like what should you focus on in that essay? I focused on a bunch of different things. Like I focused on my clubs and stuff like that, and tied them back into like how I am. I want to learn more about research specifically and about immunology, neuroscience, and other stuff, and how NCSSM would help me further my knowledge in that, and how taking those classes there and the mentorship programs and RSI programs would help me like help me achieve the goal that I have set for myself.